Hello. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Aliesha, or you can call me Lai. We are talking about having a single season, having an intentional single season, being single on purpose. Okay, I know the topic is like, what? Single on purpose? Why would you do that? The reason I wanted to talk about this video is because I was just reflecting on my single season, which I still am in, but I was just reflecting on my single season and thinking about when I got out of my last relationship. And you guys know this is a self-love channel, so I have to talk about this because this is so important. But when I got out of my last relationship, I just remembered wanting to be open to dating or being open to just starting a new relationship. And I remember specifically being out with somebody and thinking like, wow, I need to work on myself. And no, nothing against this person, but I think at the time, at that point in time, I had a reflection moment and I realized that a lot of the people that you entertain, maybe friendships or men, they're a reflection. They're a reflection back at you. They're a reflection of how you feel about yourself. They're a reflection of like the things that you see for yourself, what you believe you deserve, and also just what you think about yourself. It's a very harsh reality to come to terms with, but I remember coming to terms with that. Like, wow, I need to heal. So from there, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be single. I'm going to be single. Now, my single season lasted a lot longer than I intended for, but I started to become just obsessed and immersed with myself. And there are plenty of moments where I could have gotten into a relationship, but I started to look at people from an eye of like, are they going to be enough for me? Are they going to be good enough for me? All the work that I've done, all the inner work that I've done, do they compliment me, you know? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think a lot of people get mad at you when you have standards. That's because they don't want to meet you where your standards are. And let me be the first to tell you, there is nothing wrong with having standards. I wouldn't have been able to raise my standards, increase my value, like feel good about myself, have these boundaries in place if I didn't have my intentional single season. Now, if you're in a relationship, that is okay. I definitely think you can still work on these things in a relationship. But what I'm saying is, if you are single and you despise being single, I have to ask you a question is, are you being intentional about your single season? Are you working on the things that you need to work on in this season? Because you need to romanticize this season and you need to take advantage of the season because you're not going to get the season back. So I have a couple of things that I want to talk about when it comes to being intentionally single. I think every woman should have a single season where they're just not dating anybody, where they're not talking to anybody. Whether it's for 6 months or to a year. You know, it doesn't have to be as long as I have been single, but 6 months to a year is such a good ballpark. Okay, now let's talk about what you have to do in this season of being single on purpose. So the way to make the most of your single season, we have to talk about it. I know everyone talks about this. How do you feel about yourself? Like, do you really love yourself? This is something that I had to look within myself, is like, what are the guys in my life telling me about myself? Do I feel like I deserve more? Do I feel like I deserve less? Why do I feel like I can't have this in this person? Why do I feel like I don't deserve this? Why do I have these negative thoughts about myself? Why? Like, there's so many different things I had to question in my self-love journey, in my season of building up my self-love, my self-esteem, my confidence. I had to start asking myself these questions, and honestly it came down to the fact, like, there are things that I just knew that I needed to work on in order to believe that I deserve more, in order to increase my standard. A lot of people don't know that they are worthy. Like, we're all worthy, but a lot of the times, because of our childhood or because of past experiences, or maybe things that you've seen, you feel like you don't deserve certain things from guys, or maybe you feel like you don't deserve certain things from friendships, or specifically we're talking about guys here, but you feel like you don't deserve it, right? Not only that, you may feel like people can treat you any kind of way because you haven't established a self-love within yourself. You haven't learned to love yourself. You haven't learned to value yourself. When you come out of the single season, you need to be able to go on a date, and if that person does not align with who you are, your goals, who you want, like your standards, your boundaries, all of that, you need to be able to walk away, right? If you're in a relationship, you need to be able to walk away if somebody hurts you, if somebody cheats on you. You should not be staying for mistreatment or to be hurt, you know? And you know that moment where you need to love yourself more when you stick around for mistreatment. Like if you constantly stick around for mistreatment, right? You can't control how people treat you, but what you can control is how you operate after they treat you a certain kind of way, whether that's addressing that with them or it's walking away because they have crossed your boundaries and your standards. And to be able to love yourself is to be able to choose yourself every time, in every situation that you have to choose yourself. So if somebody does hurt you, cheats on you or whatever, you should be able to choose yourself and be like, you know what, I don't deserve somebody that treats me like this. This is why this building up this self-love in your single season is so important, because can you honestly be able to do that if things hit the fan? If you were in a relationship today, would you be able to look at yourself and be like, you know what, I'm choosing myself today? You know, that is the question I want to ask yourself, right? And if not, then we need to start building this self-love, okay? One of the first things I started with was journaling and also like learning my love language. I used to talk about love languages a lot in my older videos. Love languages are so important. How do you like to be loved? You know, a lot of people don't know how they like to be loved. There are 5 love languages. There's words of affirmation, acts of service, there's quality time, physical touch, and then there is, I believe it's gift giving or something like that. How do you like to be loved? Okay, figure out how you like to be loved and then give it to yourself, right? This is going to make you able to get into the habit of receiving love, of knowing what love actually feels like, right? You have to be able to get to this habit of knowing what love feels like, because once you get out the single season and you start dating or you get in a relationship, you need to be able to identify when somebody is treating you right? And a lot of people don't know how when somebody's treating them right because maybe you don't treat yourself right. It starts with self. It starts with self. Like, guys, like, it really starts with self. It starts with also, what do you believe about yourself? You know, building up that mindset, okay? What do you believe about yourself? Do you look at yourself and be like, man, I'm so ugly, or man, I'm just not deserving, or I'm such an idiot, I'm so stupid? Do you call yourself bad names? If this is the case, you are not giving yourself love. You're not giving yourself love, and that's one of those love languages. Words of affirmations is one of the love languages, okay? I believe we should be giving ourselves every single love language. But if you're talking down on yourself, you need to get a journal out. You need to write out the bad things that you think about yourself and start digging up the root to why you feel that way, where these things are coming from. A lot of the times it's from your childhood or things. Maybe you got bullied when you were younger. Maybe it was hard for you to make friends. Maybe it just came from the way that guys have treated you in the past, and now you feel like you're undeserving. But baby, you did not deserve that, and it's not your fault that people have treated you bad. But now it's time for you to take your power back and start treating yourself right? And I have a video about on journaling, like journal prompts you can do to start loving yourself and glow up. So if you want to see that, that was actually 2 videos back. I'll link it up above. Ultimately comes down to how you see yourself and becoming raw and honest to how you see yourself. Once you figure out how you see yourself, and this is going to require you to do some work, this is going to require you to constantly journal every single morning about how you see yourself. Once you crack down on this, you start to build that self-love up, okay? First things first is to become intentional about your self-love journey and to start journaling, to start changing your beliefs and give yourself your love languages. There are plenty of other things that you can do and that I have done, and if you want to watch a lot of my self-love videos, I have some more on like how to really start your self-love journey. I'll link some in the description box. But the next thing to do in your intentional single season, genuinely have fun. Get to know yourself and romanticize this single season. Oh my goodness. What would you be doing with a guy right now? Like, what is the most fun you would want to have with a guy, like on a date, right? once you figure that out, go ahead and do it with yourself. Go ahead and go on a solo date. Go ahead and have fun. What would you like to do? You know, romanticize that. Do you see yourself going out to dinners? Go out to dinner by yourself. Maybe go sit at a bar or go sit at a restaurant table or whatever. If you see yourself traveling with a guy, go on a solo trip. I just recently did my first solo trip. Literally, if you want to watch that video, go ahead. But like, I just recently did my first solo trip, and I just felt like that was another extension of my self-love journey that I've been on for the last 5 years now. And like, I absolutely loved it. I learned so much about myself. I learned like so much that I wouldn't have learned if I didn't take that if I didn't take that solo trip, you know. There are other things, like maybe you want to cook for your guy, right? Cook for yourself, make you a lavish meal for yourself, you know. Do you have any hobbies that you enjoy? At the end of the day, when you come out the single season, are you going to be able to like talk to this guy and be like, oh yeah, I have these hobbies in place or whatever? You want to become a multifaceted woman, right? You want to be able to be like, yeah, I do this, I do that. Like, I don't know, that's just me, okay? So I would say become intentional about also building hobbies, like, you know, go to Pilates, or, you know, try horseback riding, rock climbing. Those are things that I like to do. But you can try other things too. Yoga. Like, what are you doing? Like, you know, what are you doing now to romanticize the things that you want to do? Have fun. Go to a concert by yourself. There are things that you can do by yourself, and once you start doing these things by yourself and you genuinely have fun with yourself, you start to see the value in yourself, and you're like, wait a minute, like anybody would be lucky to have me, anybody would be lucky to be around me, because you're sitting here like literally indulging yourself and you're having fun with yourself, and you're like, in your head you're like, why wouldn't anybody be lucky to be with me? Like, I love being with me, so why wouldn't anybody love to be with me? It's like you're changing your belief system about yourself, because maybe right now you think like, oh my god, like what guy would want to be with me? Or maybe you just have this like feeling of being undeserving, right? When you start spending time with yourself, you start to tell yourself like, hey, I'm deserving of good quality time. I'm deserving of being loved. Especially when saying kind words to yourself, and you start changing your belief systems and stop talking to yourself negatively, and then you also spend time with yourself and you have fun with yourself, you really do change your mindset about yourself, and you're no longer insecure, right? And then too, don't think about it just with only solo dating yourself. Like, go out with friends, you know, be intentional about building friendships, okay? I really cannot stand when people are so much more about the man rather than their friends. Oh my goodness, it's so important to have friends in your life. Like, stop closing yourself off to friends. I never understand that. You close yourself off to really great women friendships, but you don't close yourself off to being a guy who might not even be treating you the best, right? You want to build intentional friendships. Friendships are also really, really good in this intentional single season, because it's a good practice and way to get around people that treat you well, okay? A lot of your friendships can tell you a lot about how you feel about yourself, and if you're around people that don't treat you well or whatever, that's a good indication that you'll probably allow a guy to not treat you well also. So it's really important to build genuine friendships, positive friendships, get around people that, you know, love you for you and who treat you well. And I promise you, the value you feel that increases, because you already have that value. You just have to start believing that you have that value, right? Once you get to that point of just having good female friendships, women friendships, like, you start to feel very much more uplifted. And then the importance of having fun is to realize what you would want out of your life, or what you would want after you get out of your single season. Like, do you want to travel? What do you want to do with your guy? Like, what do you want to do? And I think it's so important to figure out what you want, so that when you start being intentional about dating, or you start being intentional about getting into a relationship, you know exactly what you're looking for. You know, you may start looking for like an adventurous man, because you're like, well, I love being adventurous, so let me look for an adventurous guy. You start to realize what you want. Not only that, not even only just like the adventurous thing, but as you spend time with yourself, you start looking at yourself and you're like, okay, what are my standards? You know, when you have intentional friendships, you realize, okay, I may have a boundary in this area, right? And it'll probably be the same for when you get in a relationship. Okay, these are my standards. Like, you start to learn what your standards are once you start to spend that intentional time with yourself. And you want to make sure that you're asking yourself these questions in your journal. What are my standards? You know, what are your standards? What can you not live without? What are your non-negotiables? What are the things that you feel, like, in general? Like, what do you feel? Okay, become intentional about how you feel. That's going to be a big indication about what your standards are and what you believe. Okay, the next one that I have about being intentional in your single season is to get to know your patterns. Okay, this is probably one of the first things you should start working on, along with like your belief system, with your self-love. But who are the type of men you date? Who are the type of men that you typically go for? You know, ask yourself these questions. And I'm not talking about just looks. You know, I'm talking about, like, who are these guys? Like, you know, is there a specific pattern that they're showing you? Is there a specific way that you keep being treated as? Like, you know, like, what are, like, these are these deep questions you need to start asking yourself, because sometimes, not even sometimes, people are a mirror to you. People are an indication of how you feel about yourself. If you recognize these patterns and it's the same guy over and over again, it's time to work on yourself. When you leave this single season, you do not want it to be for nothing. You do not want it to be for nothing. You have been single for a long time, and how horrible would it be for you to be single for a long time and not discover that the whole time you've had patterns that you needed to work on. You've been dating the same type of men, and then when you get out of the single season, you start dating the same type of guy, because you haven't intentionally, like, looked at your past patterns of, like, the ways that these guys have been treating you. Sometimes it takes you looking within and looking at these past patterns, and it's gonna sting, it's gonna hurt, because you're gonna look at yourself and be like, why did I let this person treat me like this, or why do I keep doing this? But the thing is like, a lot of the times it's because of your childhood and the things that you went through. So you start to look back and you be like, okay, this is why I believe this. Or maybe you saw your parents well to each other, or maybe your parents weren't together, so now you don't entertain the best type of men because you haven't had your dad in your life. You know, there's so many different reasons why people do the things that they do. So it's so important to look at your past patterns and then dig up the root to why you do these things. Sit with yourself, ask yourself these questions. But sometimes you just have to go far back. Sometimes you have to go far back into the past to honestly understand your patterns. A great way to do this also is therapy. A therapist can kind of look better at your situation and kind of help you discover those patterns of the things that you've been doing. The next one that goes along with this one is, do you have toxic traits? Do you have toxic traits? Okay, sometimes it's so easy to look at the other person and be like, oh, well, they did this in this relationship, or they're just a horrible person. But look, you have to look within yourself and be like, look at your past relationships and be like, what things could I have worked on? What things could I have done better? Even if it wasn't your fault for a lot of the things that went on in the relationship, there are still things that you have to work on in order to be the best version of yourself. Let me tell you, it is better to work on these toxic traits. That's my dog. But it's better to work on these toxic traits now than when you get into this relationship. Now, relationships do tell you a lot about yourself, and they'll help you identify it. So I'm not saying that you have to be so perfect before you get into a relationship, right? But I think it is important to look back at past relationships and discover your toxic traits that you know you need to work on, so that you can attract somebody who is the best version of themselves. That people are a mirror to you, and if you have a whole bunch of toxic traits that you need to work on, and then you haven't worked on these things, how do you expect to attract somebody who doesn't have the same toxic traits? You know, you can't expect that somebody won't come with like a whole bunch of toxic traits if you don't work on your toxic traits. And I'm not saying that we're all going to be perfect, you know, there's probably going to be something that we always have to work on, but you want to make sure that you are at least being intentional about working on your toxic traits. Okay, the next point that I have is, do you know what you want? You also get to know what you want by looking at past experiences. All of this is like looking within the past, but looking at past experiences, looking at the things that you didn't really like in your past relationship, you can start to look at that and be like, okay, I didn't like this, I probably want this. A lot of the times what you want is what you didn't get in your last relationship. So that's why it's important to look at your past relationships and to figure out what you want. Also, like, just spending time with yourself, doing things that you would have done as a child again, having that childlike feel again, really does make you discover what you want. I don't know what it is about healing your inner child, but for some reason when you heal your inner child, things start to become more clear. Your head starts to be more clear about the things that you want, the things that you desire, you know? So the way that you heal your inner child is so good. You can do things that you used to do as a child. Maybe you loved to paint when you were a child. Maybe you loved to, I don't know, do gymnastics as a child or whatever, dance as a child. Do those things, and I promise you, the more and more you spend time with yourself, the more and more you heal your inner child, the more and more you just have fun, you start to realize what you want out of life, because you start to have that like childlike feel, and you start to just, I don't know, think about children. Like, children are very magical. Children are very like whimsical. Like, they're just always like, they know exactly what they want. They're very direct. They will tell you about yourself. So think about that, you know. That's why it's important to, you know, go back to things that you used to love. And then also other questions you can ask yourself is, what makes you feel safe and secure? What kind of romance do you like? And then give that to yourself. That is how you get to discover what you want. You start doing things with yourself. You start building your hobbies up. You start spending time with yourself, journaling, watching movies with yourself, going on solo dates. All of these things is going to help you discover yourself. Also, releasing yourself from people's expectations from yourself, or what they've used to say about you in the past, is another great way to find who you are. A lot of us are holding on to trauma or things that people have said about us and carrying it on as our own beliefs about ourselves. And to release yourself from those things is so important, so that you can discover who you are. Once you discover who you are, it becomes easier to identify what you want. You'll never know what you want until you spend that time with yourself. You be intentional about your single season. Is once you figure out what you want, I want you to work on your belief system about this stuff. Just because you know what you want doesn't mean that you believe that you can have it. A lot of people do know what they want, but they get scared that they can't really have it. Okay, so what you're gonna do, you're gonna get a journal out, you're gonna write down all the things that you want, and you're gonna start asking yourself, how do you feel about each thing that you want? Do you actually feel like you can have it? You know, you need to be honest and raw with yourself. Like I said earlier, like, be honest about it. Do you really feel like you can have it? Questions you can ask yourself is, why do I feel like I can't have it? What can I do to make myself believe that I can have it? Whether it be changing my environment, getting around people that have the things that I want, going out to different places and believing that I can have it. Sometimes you just need to see it, right? So one thing that I've always talked about is, if it exists, why can't it be you? One video that I think really you need to watch after this video is my video about, you're not asking for too much, you're asking the wrong person. Golden video. You need to watch it, because a lot of people think that they're asking for too much with the things that they want, and they're not. Okay, you have to start giving those things that you want to yourself, and then once you start giving it to yourself, you're like, this is not too much for me to ask for, you know, because you start giving it to yourself and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't even require that much effort. Like, I do this on a daily basis, right? If you do this on a daily basis, if you do, you know, if you treat yourself right on a daily basis, you treat yourself well on a daily basis, why is it hard for you to ask for somebody who treats you right, who respects you, who loves you? Why is that hard? You know, it's not hard. People just don't want to do it. People just don't want to rise to the occasion, and that's okay, because you can find somebody else that will. That's how you have to start thinking about your love life, your standards, all of it. You can have anything you desire, anything. period. If it exists, you can have it. The next point I have is self-improvement. Okay, are you improving yourself in all aspects of your life? What is the hottest version of you? What does your dream woman look like? Okay, what's your signature hairstyle? What is your gym routine? How do you like to wear your makeup? What outfits have you always wanted to wear? Also, just inner work, or just putting the good things in your body. Like, start to be intentional about self-improving and improving yourself, improving who you are. Do you want to speak a little differently? Maybe you want to work on your vocabulary a little bit, or like, you know, being more feminine, or whatever you want to work on. We can all work on it, right? Maybe you want to grow your hair out, or maybe you want a nicer body. Whatever you want, whatever you desire, start immersing yourself in it, start investing yourself in it. I promise you, you will not regret being the best version of yourself. You will not regret going to the gym. You will not regret like working on who you are. What are your self-care routines? You know, do you have a self-care routine in place? Like, do you smell good? Do you feel good about yourself? Like, how do you feel about yourself, and work on these things? I promise you, once you start doing that, your single season becomes better, and you start to be so obsessed with yourself that like nobody can come in your life who's not like adding to it, adding something beneficial to it, right? I'm telling you, you guys, I think this is one of the reasons why I have become comfortable with being like single. It's because I work on myself so much that I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with just being the best version of myself, and I know that the guy for me is coming. You know, maybe he's cooking up, like maybe he's working on being the best version of himself too. So like, that's just how you have to think about it. Anytime you get this feeling of like, oh man, I wish I was in a relationship, and let me say this, it's nothing wrong with wanting to be in a relationship, it's nothing wrong with wanting to be in love. But anytime you get that feeling, just think about how much you are working on yourself, and how your man is probably working on himself too. Because like I said, people are a mirror to you, and you want to be able to attract the best version of you, right? You want to be able to attract the best version of the guy that you would want to be with. So work on yourself. Start to immerse yourself with yourself. You will not regret it. You will not regret looking good. You will not regret it. I promise you, I do not regret it. That is all the points I had. I know this video was a little long, but I'm actually not upset about it. I'm really happy I did it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my video, and I hope like what I was saying resonated with you in some type of way. And even if it didn't, hey, I don't know, just let me know. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and bye.